Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dati Svapadantikam Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet. Hello, Vrinda Devi, Setsanji, Astrology, Bobby, Sarah. Thanks, welcome to the Potluck. So, I'm handing over the mic to you for a second. You tell me, Jolene, what's my first topic? What do you want to hear me address? Or if you have a question or something like that. It's the potluck dinner, so you have to bring a potluck. You have to bring some question. Ashimji, namaste. No questions, no topics. Please. Okay, Jolene has a question about the moon in the 8th house. So, whenever you have any questions, like what's planet A like in sign X or house N? Sorry for this. The wrong thing to do is to just give the answer to the question. The right thing to do is to show the person how to figure out the answer to the question. Really, the whole thing that you just have to learn is, what's the moon represent? What does the 8th house represent? If you have those two things right, if you have those two things clear, then it's so easy to understand what the moon in the 8th house represents. It's really not hard to figure out what the moon in the 8th house represents. What's hard is to very clearly understand what the moon symbolizes and what the 8th house symbolizes and what they, so work on that actually. Ask what's the 8th house represent. Ask what the moon represents. Okay, now let's see. Ashim says something about Ernst's responses. I haven't been aware of that. Lars G, my friend, you say, my friend whom I've never met, but my friend over Facebook. Yavana Jataka gives different planetary friends and enemies. What do you think about that? I haven't thought about it. Tell me more. Tell me how they're different. I also use different planetary friends and enemies than what most people do. Surprise, right? I do something different than what most people do. What I do differently is that, in my opinion, people have the relationships reversed. So, for example, if somebody, generally people read that particular shloka in Brihat Parasha or Hor Shastra to mean that the moon is inimical to Mercury, doesn't like Mercury. But I read the verse the other way around. So I'm also using different things, and people are already using. Well, you have. So you mentioned that Jupiter as Mars as its only enemy. You gotta look. This book is a very good source of new information. New for me, new for most people, where you can look at the origin of certain ideas from a new standpoint. Things may have evolved out of other concepts into different concepts. Yeah, it's really good. I would say you would probably get your answer by studying other concepts of friendship and enmity rather than the one that became standardized in Indian astrology. And then it would make sense in that context. Like it may have something to do with sect or something like that. All right. I got a good morning from Malaysia. Thank you, Avinash. And Antonius' question is, Gemini in the 8th house would cause Mercury to become a functional malefic. Would Mercury Dasha be a bad period when shifted from the 11th to the ascendant? Okay, this is another thing. This question reminds me of the first question of what's the moon like in the 8th house. It's easier not to answer the specific question. It's like answering specific questions is like doing homework for a teacher. But when you actually do your work, you don't do homework, you do real work. So you have concepts like functional benefic, functional malefic, for example. You have to learn them, of course, in the way, in the specific homeworky way that you have to learn something. But after you've learned what it is, don't keep using it that same way. Just get the idea. The idea is so simple. That's the other thing too, is people overcomplicate things. And we overcomplicate things on purpose. Because if something is very simple and we get it wrong, then there's nowhere to hide. But if things are very, very complicated and not very well defined, then when something gets wrong, we say, well, that's because blah, blah, blah. It's not my fault. So it's very, very nice to just be simple and straightforward and keep everything basic. Don't overcomplicate the functional benefic malefic thing. It's very simple. It just means if a planet owns difficult houses, then it becomes a difficult planet. Just keep it at that. And then you can merge it in much more easily with the rest of the simple things that you have in your mind. Maybe this is a functional malefic, but it's in great dignity. So you got it. The trick to astrology really isn't to drilling down so micro into some specific technique, but to getting the techniques so well clearly understood that they become simple and you can use 100 of them at the same time. Yeah, you can make the effort to make things simple. That's the hardest thing. Here's a question. My friend Waylon, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. How are you? You're from Canada? Here's a question from Avinash. I keep hearing different views about Rahu's exaltation and debilitation in Cancer. Some say he's exalted, some say he's debilitated. What is your view on it? That's a new view. That's a new view. Yeah, basically, the problem is, you see, Rahu and Ketu are upagraha. They're not graha, they're upagraha. Even if you don't know the difference, even if you don't know what these words mean, then you know that they're not exactly graha, they're upagraha. So they don't have their own sign, they don't have things like that. It's hard for people to deal with that simplicity. For a long time, actually. And I think even if you look in Mesopotamian astrology, there's some attempts to give some exaltation places to Rahu and Ketu as well, I think. But the way I see it, you don't need to deal with dignity with Rahu and Ketu. They're not the same as the rest of the planets. Don't bother calculating dignity for them. Okay? But most of the people don't talk about Cancer as an exaltation point for Rahu and Ketu. They talk about the 3rd. Okay, think about Rahu and Ketu. The 3rd, the 9th, the 6th, and the 12th. Those are places where Rahu and Ketu can belong and fit and do very well. Especially Ketu in the 12th, Rahu in the 6th. So now, translating that into signs, those are Jupiter signs and Mercury signs. The 3rd sign, the 6th sign. The 9th sign and the 12th sign belong to Jupiter and Mercury. So Rahu and Ketu, a case can be made to say that they'll have some sort of state which is similar to dignity, which is good if they're in Jupiter sign or Mercury sign. You keep it at that. And the 3rd and the 9th, Rahu can be very strong in the 3rd house, and Ketu can be very deep in the 9th house. So like that. So you would want to tend to put Ketu with Pisces, Rahu with Virgo, or Ketu with Sagittarius and Rahu with Gemini. And I think that's the one that you'll classically see the most. Sagittarius and Gemini mentioned as key points for the nodes. This is going fast. This potluck is going quick. This party is off the hook. I got so many new people here, I don't even know who to say hi to. But if you have another question or a topic, now's the time to bring it up, because now I can look at these comments. So I'm sorry, I have like a respiratory infection. Just a little challenging to keep talking. So go ahead, throw another comment on the table or another question. It doesn't even have to be about astrology. It's great weather over here in Japan. Yeah, literally, it's great weather because we finally got to Virgo. Now we're nicely situated into Virgo. So we're going to get our Dwiswabhav. That Dwiswabhav, that more relaxed and variational kind of life comes out. And so you get the weather that goes back and forth between being warm and cooling down. And you get nice breeze. So that's what's going on here in terms of the weather. What else did you bring to the potluck? What kind of questions? I'm hungry. Feed me. Please. Alright, we got one. When you show the different percentages of nakshatra types in your reading, you gave me 5% Tikshna. But I don't have any Tikshna nakshatras. What's up with that? Well, you may not have a Tikshna nakshatra, but you probably have a Mishra nakshatra. You must. You know, the two Mishra nakshatras are Agnis and Indragnis, which is Kritika, and Indragnis is Vishaka. So those are the two Mishra nakshatras. The Mishra nakshatra has all 6 types, including Tikshna. So if you get a planet in a Mishra nakshatra, you're going to get a little bit of everything from that. And that's how you get 5% bitter. I know, it must have come as a shock. How can a sweet lady like you have even 5% of bitterness? I'm sorry for that shock. But thank you for your question. And does it make sense? Is it clear? This is going to be a short potluck if you guys don't bring some more goodies to the table. You can ask me anything. You can just, it doesn't even have to be about astrology. Actually, did you see the video have you seen the videos that I've been doing on those philosophical questions? You know, like the last one I did was the first one was what's the fate and free will? That's on my YouTube channel. The last one that I did was what's the definition of happiness? What's happiness? Well, I did that one while I was in this infected state, so I kind of didn't talk long enough or something, and my head is a little fuzzy. I forgot to mention in that one something interesting. I can mention it now since I have to cook a little bit too for this jamboree. Happiness is your ability to fulfill a desire. If you can achieve something that you want, then you experience something in your mind called happiness. Sukha dukkha, icha dvesha sukha dukkam, sanghatas chetana triti. If you can get what you want, then your mind will experience happiness. And if you can't get what you want, then your mind will experience distress. And that's the basis of happiness. So the thing about happiness is simply, it all depends upon the thing that you want. If you want something which is very temporary and fleeting, then the happiness which you would get even from achieving it will be temporary and fleeting. If you want something that's not really so wantable in an intelligent perspective, then you'll get happiness which causes you a lot of pain. So the whole effort to becoming happy isn't really to become happy, it's to become intelligent. Actually will make you happy and understand what is really valuable. Now, the interesting thing that I didn't mention in that video was how this is related to the fourth house and the moon. Because this is the whole backbone, the spinal column of the moon's interpretation and the fourth house interpretation. Is that it is all based upon opinions about things. Icha, dvesha. I like this one. I don't like that thing. That's where the moon starts. Because it's subjective. Therefore, it always has a perspective on things, and therefore it always has an opinion about things. So it's always going to think, oh, this thing is nice, this other thing is not nice. So the thing which it wants, then it has, the itcha, the thing that it likes, it has desire for it. So the second vertebrae on the spinal column of the moon's symbolism is desire. The moon is the planet of desire. It's the planet of opinion, and because it's the planet of opinion, it's the planet of desire. Your desires are based on your opinions. If I think mangoes are great, then when I see a mango, and then I want it. If I think that birds are cool, then I'm going to be so happy that one of them just flew into my tree. I'm going to want more to fly into my tree. But if I'm Oscar the Grouch or something, and I think birds are real drag, then I'm going to go and shoo them away because I want less of them. So depending upon your opinion, you have desires. So the moon is the repository of our opinions, and that's why it's the repository of our desires. And that's why it's the repository of our emotions. Not only the moon, but this very same spinal column is for the fourth house. And even Cancer, the fourth sign. So the emotions that we feel result from how our desires play out. If we can get our desires, accomplish our desires, then we feel emotions of happiness. And if we can't get our desires, then we have emotions of sadness. So that's the whole spinal column of the moon's. That's why the moon is the planet of your emotions. Because emotions come from desires. And desires come from opinions. An opinion comes from subjectivity. So that's the part that I left out of that little video. Okay, turning the mic back over to you. All of Christopher Burns, no, and everybody else is out there. Go ahead, ask a question. The spotlight is on you. You don't want me to do all the work, did you? You did want me to do all the work. I can't think up all the topics, you know? You guys, give me a topic. It doesn't even have to be a question. If you don't make this a good potpourri, then I'm not going to do it again, you know? So throw me a topic now. You also wonder, like, where are all these naysayers? I got so many people that are like so eager to like I got so many people that are so eager to like combat me apparently, but nobody comes and combats me about anything. Oh, look at this. See, I was criticizing you guys for not giving me any potluck stuff. But you guys have been giving me tons, and I just had a huge lag in getting the comments. I have a comment from Jason. Now, you guys might not know Jason, but Jason is Maha Jason. Maha Jason wants to know what planet we were on together. Mahajason. It's the first planet. Okay, there's some thoughts about, there's some question about, you guys are very interested in Rahu and Ketu. You want to know what happens if they transit each other. Again, if you could, guys can remember that things are actually simple. And you can do this. You can do astrology. It's possible for you to do this. Just take it simple, take it slow, break it down into its parts. Don't get too caught up in thinking about, like for example, what happens if Rahu transits Ketu in Ashlesha. Think more about the general terms, like what are transits all about. First understand what transits are all about. If you understand what transits are all about, then it's really easy to answer a specific question about a specific transit. But if we're not clear about what transits are all about and how transits work, then it's going to be hit or miss, and you'll be all over the universe trying to figure out what a specific transit means and why. So let's talk about what, real quick, let's talk about what transits are and how they work. Yeah, transit is like if you have a point on your arm. Let's say that I got a boo-boo right here. And then this arm here, it's fixed. So if I get a boo-boo right here, that's like, let's say I have Saturn in this position in my birth chart. Now, when you have a transiting planets are moving across your arm. So when a transiting planet gets to that boo-boo is going to flare up. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to remember that boo-boo is there. And there's different kinds of planets. There's benefic planets that move along with their feathers and their niceness. And then there's malefic planets that move along like knives. So, if you got a sensitive point over here that's kind of sensitive to pain, and then you have a malefic planet transiting it, then you're definitely going to become aware of pain at the time that the painful planet transits the point where you have sensitivity to pain. Or if you have a point that's sensitive to pleasure, and then you have a nice, beautiful benefic planet come across and touch it so nicely, then you're going to definitely become aware of pleasure when that transit happens. So transits are a little bit advanced because they already presuppose that you know how to interpret a planet in your birth chart. Once you interpret the planet in your birth chart, it's pretty easy now to work with what the transits are going to do to it. It's going to activate that planet in your birth chart. So let's say if you got a planet over here in your birth chart that says that you're going to get a new chocolate bar from your best friend on your 41st birthday. And then, or let's take out the 41st birthday part. And then you have a little benefic planet that comes along and boom, does something to that point in your birth chart. Then the time when that benefic planet comes over that spot that says you're going to get a chocolate bar, that's the time when you're going to get a chocolate bar. That's the simple theory of it. The more complex theory is if you have like a malefic come over, then you're going to get chocolate and it's going to make you sick. It's some variation like that, basic thing. So now, let's go to the more specific thing about Rahu Ketu. Let's say you got Ketus in your chart. Ketu always represents things getting pulled down, getting pulled inward, getting pulled deeper. If something is going to transit Ketu, it's going to exacerbate that in your life. Now, also, you got to think about the speed at which the transits happen. If you just go, whoop, then I might not even notice that you went over this point. But if you go, then I'm really going to notice that you're right on top of my boo-boo. So similarly, some planets like the moon, they go, foo, fee, fa. They move so super fast all the time. Mercury, Venus, the sun, they move quite fast. So they don't really do much in terms of having effects through transits. Then you have other planets like Saturn, Rahu, and Jupiter. They go quite slow. Saturn is the slowest. So those are the real ones to watch. The slower transits affect the point for a much longer time. And then you have something called retrogression. And this is where retrogression is extremely important. The speed of the planet is not constant. So when a planet, even a planet like Saturn, can sometimes move kind of fast. And even a planet like Mercury can sometimes move slow and even stop. So you want to watch that. You want to watch the actual speed of the planet. The planet's actually, like, you can take Mercury. Mercury goes, generally Mercury's going like this, but sometimes Mercury goes. See, sometimes it slows down and stops and then turns around. So whenever a planet changes from direct to retrogress, or from retrogress to direct, then it's going to be standing on that point for a long time. That's going to be a significant transit for you to look at. Okay, that's and then the other principle is if you have one or more of those things happening at the same time. Like, let's say you can have Saturn going very slowly over one point in your chart, and then Mars might be stationing on some other point, or on an aspect that makes it affect the same point that Saturn is affecting. Those are the things that you really want to look at for major events in your life. Now, when Rahu goes over Ketu, what I've always found is the general principle is that it's going to set up. It sets up a. It sets up a chapter in life which is going to conclude 9 years later, when the nodes get into their proper alignment. You know, like when Ketu gets on Ketu and Rahu gets on your natal Rahu. So there's always like there's always a theme in life. When Rahu gets to its original place, you get some new thing that you get involved with. Then when it gets to the opposite side, so that Rahu's on Ketu and Ketu's on Rahu, then you get some big change about that. And then when it comes back, it gets full circle. That's very vague, but that's because it has to be vague. It's good to be vague sometimes, because you want to take a vague thing like that and then mix it with other things, and you'll get more specific, like what house is it in? What does it actually mean in your chart? To get there, you want to get down to the specifics. You know, look at your specifics. And we got, oh cool, there's some good questions here. Nina, you say you need a reading? I'm here. You just want to go to vicdicara.com. VICDICARA.com. Somebody's asking about nimitta or omens. Omens is just simple. You just look around and you see things and you interpret things. Just keep your eyes open. Here's a question from Heather Michaelski. You know, you just interpret things. I mean, that's a very vague answer, but that's really all it is. And you read some of the classic omens and how they've been interpreted, and then you get some idea of how to interpret them. The basic thing for omens is stuff that's unusual means you need to watch out. And stuff that's usual means things are going to go smooth. That's your basic rule book, a rule of thumb for interpreting almost every omen. Okay, Heather, you ask, why do you use only equal or whole sign houses? I can't seem to make those systems work for me. I only use whole sign houses. I don't mess around with any of the other stuff. And it works great for me. That's why. Somebody's giving me some medical advice. Thank you. Thank you, Gory. Antonius wants to know, when is Dwapara Yuga going to begin? Good. Good. This is a good question. Dwapara Yuga is done. Didn't you know? Dwapara Yuga finished. See, this is great. Now I can get on another blacklist. I'm not on enough blacklists yet. Let me get on another blacklist by answering this question. Dwapara Yuga is done. Dwapara Yuga finished 5,000 years ago, roughly. So you're late for the party. It's not going to begin. It's done. And then you have Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga lasts for 432,000 solar years. And it's been about 5. So we're not even into the transition into it. We're not even done with the transition into Kali Yuga yet. That hasn't even really started yet. Dwapara Yuga is going to begin in another 4,320,000 years when the cycle goes back around. It has to go around. So I know now you're thinking, well, but wait, Sri Yukteswar said in the Holy Science, blah, 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 blah. Well, Sri Yukteswar made up his own thing. It's not the Vedic concept of yugas. He made up his own version of yugas and he kept the same names. Because he wanted to fit it into the 26,000 year cycle of equinoctial precession. So what he did was he said, let's divide every yuga length by 360 years. And you know 360 is not a random number. 360 is the multiple between the celestial experience of time and the earthly experience of time. Because if you're not on Earth, then the sun rises once what we call a year. The sun rises when it comes over the equator on March 21st, more or less. When it comes over, when it enters 0 Aries, then it's the beginning, it's rising, it's a sunrise. So you will experience the day beginning. If you live in the heavens, you experience the day beginning at that time when the sun comes over the equator. And then you experience the noon of that day when the sun enters Cancer, and then you experience the sunset when the moon enters Libra, because then it's going back over the equator. Back over the equator, heading down. And then you experience night as it gets to Capricorn midnight. So your experience of time is 360 times dilated. So what Yukteswar said was, let's erase that. Let's erase that from the calculation of the lengths of the yugas. But the Puranas say that you have to multiply it by that the yugas are celestial. It's like geological timescales. So it's on this celestial multiple. It's not talking about quick human spans of history. So the Puranas say you have to multiply these values by 360, but he said let's take that part out. So then he gets lengths for things like Kali Yuga is 1,000 years, Dwapara Yuga is 2,000 years, Treta Yuga is 3,000 years, Satya Yuga is 4,000 years long. So that's 360 times less than they should be. And then there's more math involved, how you get to these not so round numbers. And then he said, then after Kali Yuga finishes, it starts again, but it goes in reverse. So after Kali Yuga finishes, it starts again, but then when it ends, then you have a Dwapara Yuga, and then you have this ascending cycle. So that's his whole thing. If you want to believe in that and subscribe to that, totally fine. Go for it. But it's not the Vedic thing, and it's not my thing. I'm not into that. Christopher Burns, you're looking for Soma. I heard that you can get Soma on the corner of 42nd Street in New York City. He says, where do we find the Soma these days? Soma is the super drug. It's the drug of the gods. It's Indra's special buddy. It powers him up and makes him feel great. You can't get Soma on Earth. You used to be able to get it from a bush that grew in the foothills of the Himalayas. You could get this bush and you could take out the sap. It's a milky sap. And then you could ferment it and do things with it, mix it with some other ingredients and make Soma. Can't do it anymore. That's why most of the Vedic ceremonies are impossible to perform these days. You can't get it these days. That's just the material version of Soma, though. The actual Soma is you. The consciousness itself is Soma. You are the life. You are the power. You are the joy. It's ingrained in you, in your consciousness. So where do you find Soma? Find it in the Atma of your Atma. Seek it through meditation. It's not a drug that you just buy or you make from some plants. That's a material manifestation of it. It's an approximation of true soma. True soma is consciousness itself. Istuti, thank you very much for the video that you gave me, for the questions, the interviews. Istuti's question is, how can we see if the third marriage will happen? You got to see, again, this is like super complicated. Third marriage is going to be 3, 4, I don't know. You know, astrology is a symbolic interpretation. You can try your best to see if a third thing is going to happen, but really what you're going to be looking at is for a lot of symbols of multiplicity in marriage. So the classically speaking, you'll see 7th Lord and Venus in dual signs, and also associated with multiplying planets like the nodes. And not in stable houses like the 2nd or the 4th. And if you see that, the more that you see that, you know, not just that, oh my God, I have my 7th Lord conjoined with Rahu, does that mean that my marriage is going to break? No. You got to learn about astrology. Astrology is symbols, and you have to pile the same symbol up before it becomes something important. If you see that your 7th Lord is with Rahu, and it's also in a dual-natured sign, and the same thing is true as from the 7th Lord from the moon, and the same thing is true in your Navamsha, or something similar is also true there, then yes, you're going to have a bunch of marriages. Or maybe no marriages, just a bunch of relationships. Okay, that's the way things work. Don't just look at one thing. This is how people get the pants scared off of them. Oh, you got Mars in the 12th house, Mangalik, your marriage is going to suck. It's just one thing. Yeah, you got Mars in the 12th house. Yeah, that does make an adverse effect on your ability to cooperate with other people. Yes, but that's just one thing. If you also have other things that point in the same direction, then that's going to be an important thing for you. If you don't have other things in your chart that are showing that same type of interpretation, then it doesn't make that much difference. Haha. Sabine Stetson, who I've known for a long time, though we still haven't met, asked me if I would call the moon a samsara planet. All the planets are samsara planets. The entire astrology is a study of your karma, and karma is bhuta bhavodbhava karma bhuta bhavodbhava karo visarga karma sangita. Karma is the thing which causes your samsara. Karma is the thing which causes manifestations to happen in tangible space. So the entire chart is all about samsara. All the planets are about samsara, and all the planets play their role in manifesting you in this world. Now there's a lot. Let me see how many questions there are. I'm probably getting behind, huh? Hey Priya, you asked me to comment on 424 of Gita. My mind's not that sharp that I remember exactly what 424 is. So just give me the first two words of it, and I'll know what it is. Sorry, my mind's actually pretty dull. Here's a couple of questions. But yeah, okay, but I could see why you would say the moon is samsara planet, because yeah, the moon is actually the root of your... It's very close to the root of your material existence, is the moon. And the root of your materialistic existence, believe it or not, is the sun. Because it represents your concept of who you are. And since we have a concept of ourselves being different from everybody else, fundamentally different, that's why we are existing in this fragmented kind of life. We're existing in a fragmented reality. because we have a fragmented self-image. Because our sun is fragmented in the various fragments of space, having different kinds of symbolic versions of fragmentation, then we have manifested a fragmented existence where we're separate from everybody else. And our interests are separate from your interests. So the sun is actually the root of your samsara, and then the moon is where it starts to grow. And then all the rest of the planets express your samsara. And you can say that Saturn is going to put a limit on it, but that doesn't mean Saturn is going to liberate you. And you can say that Ketu makes you want to wish that you weren't that way. So Ketu and Saturn have some noble, what would we say? They have some noble title of being helpful to moksha or enlightenment. And Guru Jupiter also has some helpful role to play in showing you that there's something bigger. And Venus has a role to play in showing you that there's something to cooperation and not being fragmented from other people, but in becoming whole with other people, becoming unified. So in this way, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Ketu really contribute to ending your samsara, your repeated existence in illusion of fragmental illusion, the illusion of fragmentation. All right, let's see what else we got. There's a lot of potluck on the table now. I gotta see what else we got. Lena says she has 2 horrible Vedic readings. Is there any point to getting a Western reading? You know, if you're getting horrible readings, maybe astrology isn't destined for you. But maybe you should learn more about it yourself so that you can tell a good astrologer from a bad astrologer. So you can tell a quack from a doc. Dr. Quack, Dr. Quack, please come to the emergency room. There's somebody here who wants the reading. So it's important for you to learn enough about astrology so that you can differentiate somebody who really knows what they're talking about to somebody who's just talking things to mystify you. Then you'll be able to select an astrologer that you could trust. Pluto talks about... Jolyn wants to know why Vedic astrology doesn't incorporate Pluto and other outer planets. That's because it's an old astrology. It's a classical system of astrology. In classical astrology, they didn't even know about Pluto, Neptune, and all that stuff. So of course they didn't use them. But that doesn't mean that you should use them now. This system was developed. It's a system that's developed. It's not broken. The problem is people don't know how to use the system, so they think they need to change it. See, people are not humble. We all think that we are so smart. If this thing doesn't work, there must be a problem with it. It's not that I don't understand the basics. I understand the basics. And as I'm an advanced student, and this thing doesn't work, so I have to fix this and invent some new techniques. New techniques, new techniques, new techniques. Look at this new technique I picked up from here. Technique, new technique, predictions. It's all a bunch of crap. You don't need techniques. You need to learn the basics. Deeper, deeper, deeper. Go deeper. Don't keep piling up garbage on top of garbage. So you don't need to throw in new planets, asteroids, all this junk. Learn the beauty of the system that was developed by the ancients. It's a beautiful system. Don't mess with it. Don't monkey with it. Learn it. Embrace it. Make yourself one with it. Don't change it to fit you. Why don't you try that? Yeah, see? Everybody thinks, I should change the world to fit me. And that's why nobody's happy. Because the world doesn't want to change to fit you. Everybody else in the world wants you to change to fit them. So all you're going to do is fight with people. Why not take a different approach? Take the approach that let me change to fit the world. Let me change. Let me adjust myself to reality. rather than try to make reality adjust to me. Then all of a sudden you feel very, very happy, because reality is very cooperative with that. Similarly with astrology, don't try to change it, update it, all this junk. Just try to make yourself whole and one with it. The reason why we don't talk about outer planets is because astrology is based on the things that you can see. The planets that move in the sky that you can see, and then you can interpret the positions that they're in. You can't see these outer planets, so they're not a part of the system. All of astrology is based on natural symbols about things that you can see. The sun rises here, so this part of the sky represents things that the sunrise represents, symbolizes. The sun sets over here, so this part of the sky in the west represents stuff about the sun setting. Jupiter, it's very, very clear and constant and steady, so it represents what it represents. Venus is very sparkly, Mars is very red. It's all about things that you can see. Rahu, it makes the sun go away. So things that you can't see, like asteroids, Neptune and all that stuff, it's not a part of this symbolism. Christopher Burns says, why do you think Sun, Moon, Mars, and Rahu avatars are pure Paramatma, and the others are not, especially Rahu and Ketu? Ha! This is just like, I think if you could please watch my video that I did on this chapter. This is the third chapter or something, or the opening chapter of Briyat Parashara or Shastra. I did a video on that on YouTube. This thing about this much Paramatma and that much Atma, it's a total joke. It's a total misinterpretation. So please look through my YouTube channel for that video. Okay, let's see what else we got. Now this is a nice question. Heather again asked, she's new to Vedic, so hopefully this isn't a silly question. Silly questions are fun. That's fine if you ask a silly question. But when using the tropical zodiac, do you use different calculations for nakshatra degrees? So that's a very good question. The nakshatras, the word nakshatra literally means the stars, the points of light, the jyotibimba, that make the night, the celestial sky. That's what nakshatra means. It means maker of the heaven. Nakshatra. The stars are stellar. The word sidereal means stellar. It's Latin. Sidereal is the Latin word for stellar. It means pertaining to stars. So, obviously, when you're talking about the stars, then you're going to use sidereal calculations to determine where they are. Okay. So when this is the thing that's blowing people's mind, that they're having a hard time with, is that they always thought that the nakshatras were just welded in to the rashis. And wherever 0 degrees Aries is, well, that's also where 0 degrees of Ashwini is. So the part that's blowing their mind is, it's not blowing their mind that somebody would want to use a tropical zodiac, but what's blowing their mind is that somebody is taking the nakshatras and pushing them to take an Ashwini and pushed it away from Aries. Moved it away from Aries. Well, that's somebody who did that was God, because that's the way that the universe works. The precession of equinoxes causes the stars to drift in relation to the equinoctial points, which determine the rashis. So you're going to have to do 2 calculations at once. You're going to have to do a tropical calculation for Aries, etc., the 12 signs, and you're going to have to just apply an Ayanamsha to that, which just basically means subtract 24 degrees to understand where the positions of the nakshatras are. So even if you want to switch or use tropical rashis in a Vedic calculation, which I highly recommend, please do not keep the nakshatras welded to that tropical rashi thing. The nakshatras are in their own, they're the nighttime stellar things. So yes, the nakshatras have to be sidereally calculated. Christopher Burns asks, what's the most useful remedial measure? Well, Christopher Burns, what's the most serious problem? Remedial means you're going to fix something, right? So the offering, I'm sorry, I got this other comment in my head. So what's the biggest problem? The biggest problem, a remedial means something that will fix a problem. What's the problem? The best remedial must be able to fix the biggest problem. What's the biggest problem? Is the biggest problem that my salary is not enough? Well, that's a problem, but it's not the biggest problem, because some people can be happy with less money. Is the biggest problem that I got some kind of infection in my lungs? Well, that's a problem, but it's not the biggest problem. There's some reason that I got this infection. I wasn't living very carefully as a result of something else. What's the biggest problem? The biggest problem is called avidya, ignorance, lack of awareness. So what's the best remedial measure? The best remedial measure is vidya, knowledge. So what's the best remedial measure in astrology? A good reading. Getting a good reading where you get good information about your life and your world is the best remedy for the challenges and the problems that you're facing. Then, if you want something more like some kind of regimen or practice that you can perform, then out of those, the best remedy is mantra. Because mantra is made of words, and words contain vidya, good information that will correct your mistakes about how you're looking at yourself in the world. So an astrologer who knows mantras and knows astrology well can see what kind of mistakes you have about what kind of a vidya you have and give you an appropriate mantra. And Parashara has given one for each planet, which is the most brilliant section in the whole Parashara Horror Shastra. After mantra, the most effective remedial measure is action. Do something good for somebody else. If you're feeling pain in a certain area of life, do something to help other people who are feeling similar pain. That's the best remedial measure for karma. Okay, Guru Priya gave me this quote. I think this is Brahmarpanam Brahmahavat. That the offering, the process of offering is Brahman. And she wants me to interpret that verse of the Bhagavad. Yeah. The verse of Bhagavad Gita. Let me see if I can get it for you. This is one of those verses that I've never been able to remember because there's so much repetition of the same word. Here's the verse. Brahmarpanam Brahmavir Brahmagnau Brahmana Hutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. So you see how many times Brahman is mentioned? So it's saying Brahma, the Arpana is Brahman. So what's Brahman? Brahman is this consciousness. Aksharam, Paramam, Brahman. Brahman is the supreme substance. The supreme substance, the supreme foundation of all reality is consciousness. That's the supreme substance. Brahman. So in this verse is saying Brahman is everything. Brahman is the thing that you're giving. Brahmarpanam. Brahmahavi. It's the butter that you're giving it with. It's using a classical Vedic metaphor for sacrifice, but this is not very relevant to us these days, so I'll translate it in a more relevant way. The thing which you're giving is consciousness. The way that you're giving it is consciousness. Brahma Agni, the fire. The effort that you're using to give it is consciousness. Brahmana Hutam. Even the thing that, everything about what you're doing and what you're giving is Brahman. And Brahmaiva Tina Gantavya. The thing which you're trying to reach is Brahman. Brahma Karma Samadhina. You'll see this if you do your karma well. If you do spiritual karmas, if you do conscious karmas. So this verse is in the 4th chapter of Gita, where Krishna is very strongly recommending the process of karma yoga. That real spiritual life is not done by running away and meditating someplace, but it's done by being active in the world in an intelligent, conscious, loving manner. And in that particular verse, he's saying you will realize that Brahman is everything, not by going off and being some kind of a yogi in a cave, but by doing your karma with full attention and full detail. This is interesting. Sunidhi Bhatia asked, why is a house before the moon sign and a house after that considered a part of Sadesati? How is Saturn bad transiting a house before the moon and a house after the moon? Well, Sadesati is a popular thing. Much like Mangalik and Mangal Dosh, Kuja Dosh. Popular things are usually popular because they're shallow. Because most people are shallow. But if you give somebody a shallow statement, they'll love it. They run with it. That's why never just think that the person who has the most followers is the guru. The person who has the most followers is probably the biggest cheater. Because people follow people that you relate to. And most people are fools. So actually the people who have real substance and real value, they have very few followers. So anyway, these concepts like Mangalik and Sadesati, they're very, very popular because they're very, very shallow and simple. And they're taken so much out of context. Out of context. Like I said before, you don't just, oh no, I have Mars in the 12th house, so my marriage is going to be bad. It's not just that. There's so many other things happening at the same time. Don't just fixate on one thing in your chart. Now, the house of the moon and the houses on either side are super, super sensitive and important. And this is one of the very important yogas that I'm going to go over soon in my video series on how to read a chart. It's because the house, the sign or the house that's before the moon will rise before the moon does, and the sign which is after the moon rises after the moon does. So they lead the moon into the world and they allow the moon to express itself to the world. And so planets which are in those two houses are very, very important to the moon. And a moon without planets in those two houses is described as being void, as being lonely, as being incapable, challenged in its interactions with the world. So there's some soundness to the reasoning that when Saturn is transiting the house before the moon, or the moon's own house, or the house after the moon, then there's something to pay attention to there. There's some effect there. But the idea that Sadesati is bad and everything bad is going to happen during Sadesati is just a complete joke, an oversimplification, meant to scare people because you get more likes and fans and everything if people get really worked up. And then people come running to you for help. This is always the thing too. If you actually try to be a good astrologer and make a lot of money with astrology, then you need to keep people dependent on you. You want repeat clients. So you got to keep these people needing you. You don't want to actually cure them and set them free. So you got to give them a lot of fear and make them think that you're the only one who can solve their problems. So that's why a lot of astrology is fear-based. But that's all junk. Try to just weed that out and don't participate in that garbage. Saturn in the moon's 12th house, for example, lets you see the flaws in the world, lets you see the mistakes, lets you see the world with dispassion. So when Saturn comes into your 12th house, even by transit, there's some of that comes into your life. Saturn with the moon does something very similar, and Saturn on the other side of the moon, on the second house side of the moon, lets the moon express itself to the world through Saturn's logic and through Saturn's detachment. So basically, Saturn's interaction with the moon is that Saturn is going to dispassionize the moon. Why is that bad? That's not bad. If you're going to wrestle with it, then you're going to feel a lot of grief and sadness. But don't wrestle with it. And don't overdo the Sadesate thing. Sadesate lasts for 7.5 years. How important, how special can it be? The things which last for a long time are very general. So don't get carried away by Sadesatis. Okay. Got a couple of more minutes. Let's do a couple of more minutes. I mean, how many more should we do?
I got 15 here.
Twins. Somebody's asking about twins, Jesse. Twins are not born at the same exact moment. But here's where you're going to see that astrology is interpretive. It's not an exact hard science. And that's one thing. And the reason why it's that way is because karma or fate or the future is not exact and hard and set. So there's a lot of play in your destiny, because there has to be a lot of play because your free will is going to affect it. So twins may be basically the same, but look into the Shashyamsa. Look and see. You'll see what's different. Sometimes twins can be born an hour or 2 hours apart. Sometimes twins can be born 2 or 3 minutes apart. Even 2 or 3 minutes apart is going to make a difference to several of the Varga charts. And it makes a difference to how the ascendant lines up with things, and therefore the prominence of different planets in the chart. And that the twins thing also just lets you realize that astrology is not going to tell you exactly what everybody's going to exactly do on every day of their life, because that's also up to them. There's some play. Avinash asked the question about homosexuality and gay marriage in Vedic tradition. So one thing to understand about Vedic tradition is that Vedic tradition was very ancient. And the Indian tradition today, the tradition of India today is the ruins of the Vedic culture. And those ruins have been mixed with other cultures, especially Muslim culture and especially Christian culture later. First was the Muslim invasion, and then later came the British invasion, and not so much Christian culture, but just modern global culture then came in. So you can't really assess what the Vedic culture was like by looking at Indian culture. But you will find traces and ruins and components of Vedic culture still in Indian culture today. So India is very unfriendly to homosexuality and gay marriage. But Vedic culture, there was not even marriage in Satyuga. If you read in Mahabharata, you'll find that there's the story given about when marriage became a law. There was very few laws in Vedic culture, because Vedic culture thrived at a time when people were prominently good by their nature. And people who are good don't need a lot of rules because they naturally do good things. You know, a man as a child, you don't need to give him a law that says that he has to take care of the child. He's going to love that child if he's not a monster. The problem is that Kali Yuga is full of monsters. So then we have to have so many laws. But in Vedic culture, there was no government for a very long time. Kings are, I think, Treta Yuga with Prithu begins with kings. There's no religious functions either. People simply worship God naturally. In Satya Yuga, there's no religious tradition either. There's no marriage at all. Then if you look at the early forms of marriage, there's like all kinds of things that are considered marriage that you wouldn't consider these days marriage. But if you look at ancient Vedic culture, you'll find that homosexuality, that the basic concept of ancient Vedic culture is that every individual can make a contribution to society. And that every individual should make a contribution to society. That's their karma yoga. There's no individual who can't make a contribution to society. That's the Vedic Varnashram spirit. That culture is called Varnashram. That everybody, regardless of their Varna, regardless of their ashram, regardless of what they're like and what they do, everybody can contribute to society. So, for example, gay men would be used by the king, employed by the king, to guard the queens and the princesses and all those. That was one of the big employment opportunities for gay men. Teaching the princesses and things like that. The kings would also employ gay men for that, because men have some, clarity in how they teach. Or they may be good at dance. If you look at Mahabharata, you'll find that Arjuna became a neuter for a year, a eunuch, a third gender, for a whole year, and dressed as a woman. Arjuna, this is Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita Arjuna, the guy with the big arms who kills people with arrows. He became a woman more or less for a year, and a dance instructor. And nobody ridiculed him for that and said, gay boy, blah, blah, blah. That was just a natural thing that you could do. So whatever you are, you just try to contribute to society. The thing about the sexual attitude in India these days is hugely influenced by the Muslim culture and then the Victorian British culture. So it's really not representative of Vedic culture at all. All right, let's see. Let's try to end it. Yeah, I guess we're going to just end it then, huh? Maybe I'll look for one more question. I guess we're going to end. You see, let me bring this to somebody's attention. Gauri said she went through Sati Sati and never even realized it. Right? And then Nirav said he went through Sati Sati and all kinds of things happened. So you see, then there must be more than Sati Sati. That's important. If one person, you have to think clearly. You don't have to be a scientist, but you should learn how to use your intelligence to think clearly. It's not just if two people went through Sati Sati and one person had all kinds of things happen to them and another person had nothing at all special happen to them, then there must be something else working here than just the Sati Sati. Right? So that's how you'll learn astrology. Okay, how is this person's... Nirav had all kinds of things happen in his Sati Sati, and Gauri didn't. How is Gauri's chart different from Nirav's chart? What else happened during the Sade Sati for Nirav? Maybe he doesn't even know about it. Maybe he thinks that Sade Sati is causing this big thing, but he's actually having Saturn station on some point, or Jupiter station on some important point. Something that he may not have even been educated about might be happening. That's a lot more powerful than his Sade Sati, but just because Sade Sati is happening at that time, he may think it's because of Sade Sati. Right? It's like if I sneeze and the door shuts, then you might think that, wow, when Vic sneezes, doors shut. But it might just be a coincidence that I was sneezing at the same time that somebody else closed the door. So, you know, Sade Sati happens for 7.5 years. There's a long time for doors to shut in there. So people can say, wow, my Sade Sati did all these things. Look, yeah, because it lasts for 7 years. So think carefully. Take your intellect. Use it. Cultivate it. Think carefully. Study carefully. And go about things systematically. Don't get caught up into bells and whistles, and don't get caught up into techniques and everything. Just drill down into understanding the fundamental symbols of astrology, and then everything will start to make sense. Alright everybody, thank you so much for coming to the Potluck Free for all Astro Jamboree. It was great. Thank you for all the questions and comments and all that stuff. It was actually, we had a great party, so I'll do this again for sure. Thank you. See you again. See you soon, maybe in Sedona. What I'm going to do is I'll make some kind of a Twitter account for Sedona, and then you guys could, if you want to be there and actually meet up or something, you could be on the Twitter with me so we can know where people are at the same time. I'll give you more information about that as we get closer. Thanks everybody, really. See you next time.